Give it up for Alanis Morissette.
I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm healthy. I'm high, but I'm grounded. I'm sane, but I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful. And what it all comes down to is that everything's gonna be fine, fine, fine. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving a high five. Well, I feel drunk, but I'm sober. I'm young and I'm underpaid. I'm tired, but I'm working. I care, but I'm restless. I'm here, but I'm really gone. I'm wrong and I'm sorry, baby. And what it all comes down to is that everything's gonna be quite alright. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is flicking a cigarette. What it all comes down to is that I haven't got it all figured out just yet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving the peace sign. I'm free, but I'm focused. I'm green, but I'm wise. I'm hard, but I'm friendly. I'm sad, but I'm laughing. I'm brave, but I'm chicken shit. I'm sick, but I'm free. And what it all boils down to is that no one's really got it figured out just yet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is playing the piano. What it all comes down to, my dear friends, yeah, yeah, is that everything is just fine, 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 fine. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is heading on taxi cab. If it weren't for your maturity, none of this would have happened. If you weren't so wise beyond your years, I would have been able to control myself. And if it weren't for my attention, you wouldn't have been successful. And if it weren't for me, you would never have amounted to very much. Hey, this could get messy, but you don't seem to mind. Don't go tell everybody. Don't overlook this supposed crime. We'll fast forward to a few years later, and no one knows except the both of us. And I have honored your request for silence, and you've washed your hands clean. You're essentially an employee, and I like you having to depend on me. And you're a kind of protege, and one day you'll say you learned all you know from me. I know you depend on me like a young thing would to a guardian. I know you sexualize me like a young thing would, and I think I like it. Yeah, this could get messy, but you don't seem to mind. And don't go tell everybody. Don't overlook this supposed crime. We'll fast forward to a few years later. No one knows except the both of us. And I have honored your request for silence, and you've washed your hands clean. What part of our history's reinvented looks what? And what part of your memory is selective and tends to forget? But with this distance, it seems so obvious. Just make sure you don't tell on me, especially to members of your family. And we best keep this to ourselves and not tell any members of our inner posse. And I wish I could tell the world, 'cause you're such a pretty thing when you're done up properly. And I might want to marry you one day if you watch that weight and you keep your firm body. And yeah, this could get messy, but you don't seem to mind. Yeah, don't go tell everybody. Don't overlook this supposed crime. We'll fast forward to a few years later, and no one knows except the both of us. And I have honored your request for silence, and you've washed your hands clean.
Thank you so much.
How about getting off all these antibiotics? How about stopping eating when I am full of? How about them transparent dangling carrots? How about that if enjoying the moment for once. How about how good it feels to finally forgive you? How about grieving it all at a time? Thank you, India. Thank you, terror. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, frailty. Thank you, consequence. Thank you, silence. The moment I let go of it was the moment I got more than I could handle. The moment I jumped off of it was the moment I touched down. How about no longer being masochistic? How about remembering your divinity? How about unabashedly bawling your eyes out? How about not equating death with stopping? Thank you, India. Thank you, Providence. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, nothingness. Thank you, clarity. Thank you, silence. An old man it's up in here. 2 minutes too late, and isn't it ironic? Don't you think it's like rain on your wedding day to free hide when you already paid? It's the goodbye eyes that you just didn't take. And who would have thought it figures? Mr. Play It Safe was afraid to try. He backed his suitcase, kissed his kids goodbye. He waited his whole damn life to take that flight. And as the plane crashed down, he thought, well, isn't this nice? Isn't it ironic? Don't you think it's like rain on your wedding day to free hide when you already paid? It's the goodbye eyes that you just didn't take. And who would have thought it figures? has a funny way of helping you out when you think everything's gone wrong and everything blows up in your face. A traffic jam. It's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. It's meeting the man of my dreams and meeting his beautiful husband. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? A little too ironic, and yeah, I really do think it's like rain on your body. It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's the good advice that you just didn't take. Who would have thought it'd figure us?
Thank you so much, everyone. Bless you. Love you. See you soon.
Please welcome Alanis Morissette and her interrogator, May Potts.
I love that they call me an interrogator. It's off to a scary start already for both of us. You know, this is such a thrill. I know that there's fans here like myself, so let's put a warm welcome once again for Alanis. You know, it was just a few hours ago that she got inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award. Okay, this has got to be a weird thing. When they first told you were going to get that, what were the thoughts that went through your head?
Which lifetime? No, I was just really grateful. And it's always a challenge for me to stand and receive recognition, so my friends challenged me to just shut up and take it.
It is hard sometimes to take a nice compliment, isn't it? And this is one of the ultimate ones.
Yeah, it was really touching in a way that I didn't expect, so I was very moved.
Now that it happened, and now that you knew that it was coming, with something like this, where even during the award show, they sort of, did this montage looking back on your career, did it actually give you, even before today, the opportunity to sort of pause and reflect? Did it get you going there?
Yeah, there was a lot of footage that I didn't even remember, being a part of. So it was a trip down memory lane for me, and it's cool. I would hang out with her.
You like that girl, huh?
Yeah, she's hot.
We're talking about the past with a lifetime achievement, but you've got so much coming up, future-wise. We have a new album that I understand is ready to come out, May 20th? Is that the right date, I think? Flavors of Entanglement. I heard there were over 30 songs written for this. Is that right?
There were 24.
24.
Yes.
So what was the criteria, and what did you want to reflect in the songs that you chose?
Well, there's a chronology to this record more so than any of the other ones that I've written in the past. A lot of songs are often written in retrospect, but these ones were written in real time, so they served as a life raft of sorts during a very intense time. So there is a chronology to them in a way that dictated the sequence and the choosing of the songs. And then there's a whole other track, sort of sidetrack of what I've always loved to do in songwriting, really, which is write about the microcosm, my relationships with other people, my relationships with myself and God. And then what that winds up looking like in the world, between nations, the macro versions. So those two tracks are covered in the record.
Right, okay. When you're talking then, we talked about lyrics when you're talking about reflecting personal things, but what about the music? Did you, I think I read something where Guy Sigsworth said that we may be surprised musically, that there may be some things that won't shock people but will surprise us. What do you think he's referring to, or can you tell us?
He is a genius, in my opinion, so he's really flattering himself, I think, in a good way. His sensibility is very technologically oriented. His his brain works in a very different way than mine does. So I would just watch him in awe. And my sensibility is a little bit more organic, and I'll do something in 5 minutes and then I'll be finished. And I'll say, that was great, I gotta go. And he's more meticulous, and so the combination of both our sensibilities, I think, make an interesting sonic landscape.
When we talk about you as an artist, and it's written all the time too, that you are so personal in what you put out there. And knowing that you are such an accomplished producer and songwriter, what is it then that you look for in a collaborator?
I hate to write songs.
No.
I hate to work.
Really?
Yes. So creating structure of any kind is very helpful to me. So if someone is at a studio whom I'm looking forward to writing with or spending time with, and he's meeting me there or she's meeting me there at 1 o'clock, I'm accountable and I have to show up. And then once we get going, the process is really humbling and inspiring. However, to get me there, it's not unlike a workout. I hate to even think about putting my running shoes on, but once I'm running, I'm on a high. So it's like that.
Now, you had an outstanding working relationship with Glenn Ballard, who, of course, was here. I'm not sure if he still is, but he was here for the induction. When you're working with someone new, again, I guess, is it challenging to sort of put yourself in that place of trust?
Yeah. I trust myself enough to not really worry about that so much. It's really a crapshoot in the sense that there is an intimacy musically, certainly, and emotionally for the person with whom I'm writing or connecting, for them to be able to hold the breadth of what it is that I'm writing about to enough of an extent so that the music can reflect the emotionality of what I'm writing about. So I have to trust that they'll be able to go to the heights and the lows, frankly, along with me enough to be able to demonstrate it through music.
And when I think about someone who's working with you, and the fact that you spoke about it earlier today, that you really journal, that you are constantly writing. So it's not like you just all of a sudden go in and write a song. You're pulling from all sorts of sources that you've been writing all along. With that in mind, I'm just wondering whether you have to, does this person work to sort of take you outside of yourself and be a little bit more objective? Because can it not sort of all start swimming around too much in your head when you're trying to make an actual song of all of this?
Well, that's part of the point, I think, is that I'm given the freedom and the context in which it's safe to dwell within my own story or my own revelations or rock bottom moments. And the person I'm with really goes on their own personal journey with me, and we often wind up meeting halfway. So it's an alchemy of sorts.
So now you're getting ready to put another record out, and I had to think, as an artist, it's an interesting job, isn't it, that you're always putting out there your thoughts, your opinions, your emotions, and then you're throwing it out to the public, and they are going to consume it and scrutinize it. So at this point in your career, what's the reward?
Well, the writing of it is really for my own sake, and the sharing of it becomes an act of, I don't know, generosity, service, connection, offering, invitation, So I'm aware of the fact that whatever it is that I'm writing, I may have my own perception of it and my own, identification with it, but once it's shared publicly, it really becomes theirs. It's not mine anymore, and anyone's interpretation is the correct one for them. So I think when Jagged Little Pill first came out and people were resonating with it to the point where they expressed that they felt comforted by it, I realized that there was something else going on other than this fantastically self-indulgent process of songwriting. It really did become an invitation to connect with people and invite them to define themselves in accordance to what I was writing. So it became triply fun and much more aligned with a sense of a life purpose for me, rather than just kind of spinning my creative wheels for no apparent reason.
Usually when people go through life's journeys, and as you talk about in your music, we go through and we leave them behind. As an artist, you're going to be revisiting it all the time. I mean, you still have to go out there and sing You Oughta Know. So how do you reconcile that with where you are now?
Well, I'm so grateful when I get to sing. We're on tour right now, and just last night, performing these songs that go on the entire emotional landscape. So whatever it is that I haven't worked out before the show, I oftentimes work it out on stage. So there aren't any songs that I don't enjoy singing, but I really appreciate the fact that they do kind of take me down. I feel wrung out by the end of a show, like I've covered the gamut.
also find it interesting that for someone who seems to be on such an open journey through. I loved a quote that you said. I read it actually in Chatelaine magazine this month. She's on the cover. You may want to pick that up. Good recipes and Alanis Morissette.
And one day I'll give my
There you go.
recipes for
But
peanut butter
I love
sandwiches.
there's a quote in there, and I got to see if I got it right. You're a spiritual being having a human experience rather than a human being having a spiritual experience. And when I read that, it was kind of like, wow, isn't letting go, to do that, you have to really let go. And I'm just wondering, I also read you're a control freak. So how does that work?
Feels like death.
Death?
Yeah. Well, it's a perfectionism thing. I think to let go of control for me is just, it's a death. So it's terrifying. It's terrifying to be perceived as not perfect. But it's fun, and there's more peace.
And that's why I asked also about the putting the music out there, because I would tend to think, no matter how often you do it, when you're putting yourself out like that, it can't be easy to take criticism. How do you reconcile that when you read things? I mean, people write all sorts of stuff when something comes out.
Well, the root word of criticism implies that there's some critical aspect to it. So I don't really listen to criticism in that sense. But I do have certain people in my life whom I feel loved enough by and safe enough with that I take feedback from them, both sort of challenging feedback and loving feedback. So I'm selective about who I solicit that kind of feedback or advice from, so to speak. And everyone else commenting on whatever it is that I'm putting out there is ultimately telling me more about themselves than they're telling me about me. If someone resonates with the emotionality, I can tell immediately that they're, they lean toward being emotional themselves. Or if someone's horrified by my anger, I can just see that it's not about me and that they have issues with their own anger or whatever. So they're actually defining themselves while they're critiquing me.
Yeah, so watch it. Let me talk about, you're an artist on many levels. You're a songwriter, you're a singer, you're a musician, you're also an actor. And I understand you've done, is this really your first starring role in a film? Okay, tell us about this film.
It's a book by Philip K. Dick, adapted into a movie, a book called Radio Free Albemuth. And I portray the lead, one of the lead characters. Her name's Sylvia, and she gets messages from Velis, which is the equivalent of God in in Philip K. Dick's dreamy landscape. And she is commissioned to overthrow the government, but be very private about it. So the whole movie, she's lying. And if you were to watch the movie again, you would see that she was lying the whole way through. So the performance was challenging because I had to look sincere while lying through my teeth the whole time.
Now, Philip K. Roth, were you a fan of this guy's a science fiction writer. I'm sure a lot of people already know that, but his movies, or his books rather, have been adapted into several movies like Total Recall and stuff. Were you a fan?
Yeah, Minority Report and Blade Runner were Philip K. Dick books adapted, so huge fan. And he's got this really deeply kind of spiritual undertone and very poetic and a little nuts, which is a great combination.
You seem to be quite diverse in the kind of roles you pick. I understand you did a play, which I didn't see. It was in off-Broadway, The Exonerated, which I gather was pretty dark. And then you do some stuff like Curb Your Enthusiasm. And this darkness and light, this comedy and drama, you seem to reconcile that. Which do you feel best with, though? How do you like to express yourself the best?
It depends on how close I am to my menstruation.
That'll do it. That'll do it. When you hit menopause, it'll be dark movies for a decade.
No, I like them both. I like cracking up, and I like whatever humanity flavors happening that day.
I think that when we see you, and we've seen you in your interviews, we listen to your music, and a lot of it can be very, sort of reflective and serious, and then we see you, and you just like to have fun, and you can be really, kind of goofy. I remember the Junos; they were goofy, they were fun. You came out nude, so. You probably didn't want me to bring that up again? Oh, okay.
Sure.
And even in the My Humps video, which is, I think one of those things where I think you were surprised at how much that took off. But when you do those kind of things, do you purposely want to be seen as a little bit lighter than perhaps your music would reflect?
There's no real concerted effort being made. But I think the nature of the songwriting process for me is very grounding. So it makes sense to me that the songs wind up being relatively serious in some ways, and then thereby the interviews wind up being so, and so they all kind of build upon each other. And it was almost like this sort of the goofy, kind of lighthearted levity aspect of things were saved for my sweatpant off the radar time. So now everything's just integrating more. It's great.
I'm just going to say one thing about this My Humps video. Am I the only one that, after watching it a few times, got kind of the vibe that it was a little bit more poignant than I originally thought? I started thinking, oh my God, this is so David Lynch-like after a while.
But it is important to make your man work, make you work.
Yeah,
It's very important.
exactly. Very poignant. Is it true that you've written a memoir?
I don't use the word memoir.
What would you like to use?
What do I use? Memoir implies that it's a long story about me, which it isn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know how to categorize it. I'm in the midst of writing it right now. But it is a combination of art, travelogue, personal anecdotes, essays, poetry, lyrics. My intention is to have some music in the back of the back book sleeve. So it's like a collage book. Hard to figure out where it can be categorized, but it's not finished yet, and we'll see.
Do you have a time frame? Like, are you setting yourself to want to have it finished by a certain? Because you're getting ready to, put out an album and go on the road. So I imagine this is going to be on hiatus for a while.
Yeah, they say the best way to get something done is to give it to a busy person.
That's true.
So
yeah.
apparently I'll get something done. I have no deadline. I'd like to get it done within a year or two, maybe.
Well, again, this is maybe one of those things that has had you thinking back on a few things. Can I take you way back to a little show called Star Search?
Sure.
Sure. You know what? Now we're watching. I mean, American Idol is, and all these idol shows have become such a big cultural phenomenon for Tuesday and Wednesday night television. Yet Star Search was something that, I don't know, how old were you when you did that?
I think I was 14 or 15.
What do you remember from that experience, and do you think it had any positive effect for you in the long term?
I just remember being terrified, and a guy named Chad won, and I had a big crush on him. It was fun. I was very wide-eyed about the whole city of Los Angeles at that time. It was my first kind of love affair with the city. So.
Which you've now made a big part of your life. Is it true that early in your career, you were at one point called in and asked by someone to lose weight, that you had to do that to make it in this business?
Yes.
Now that's got to be something that would really knock a young girl's self-esteem for a loop. How did you handle that?
I started sticking my finger down my throat.
No.
It's funny, come on. Cause and effect. No, there's a lot of pressure on people in the public eye. I see so many actresses in Los Angeles and women in general. There's so much pressure to adhere to this standard of perfection. And I know that us women are, we're multi-layered creatures, and a big piece of our allure is how beautiful we are. But there's so much pressure to stick to this standard that there's this self-annihilation thing that goes on. So finding a way to feel beautiful and feel happy is a nice combination, one that took a while to get to.
It does take a while, and I think that when you combine perhaps, taking a young woman who, is trying to also get a career going and has drive, and you combine that with perhaps the trappings of fame, you're looking at a pretty toxic situation, as we have seen. But it's not new. I mean, Judy Garland, it happened to her, and it's happening, today as well. What gave you the edge to get through it?
Who says I'm through it?
Okay, I was wrong.
No, I don't know. I just believe in well-being in general. I believe that my innate self is goodness, and it's just good. So anything that feels terrible must imply that there's some thought or some belief that I'm believing that is not in alignment with what is true and real. So therein, begins the journey of trying to eradicate, or even just discover at least, any thoughts that keep me from that well-being.
I know that one of the things that you did after your huge, your success after Jagged Little Pill was take a journey to India. I have a friend who actually does that every year now. Do you go back?
I have gone back a few times. I love it.
Now, what is it about that place? Was it that place, or could you have had a good sort of come through somewhere else as well, or was it something about India itself?
I like to travel around and wear the same clothes every day and be dirty, so that helped. India was good for that. I think it was the act of being somewhere where no one knew who I was. The odd person on a train here and there would know who I was, but I just wanted to get away from the Western culture in general. My twin brother was there, so I was visiting him. But I could have sat still somewhere and come to some of the same revelations. It was really the most important aspect of that, I think, was the stopping.
Right.
Because I'd been on a treadmill, I was a workaholic. So for me to stop was huge.
You went to Fiji this year. I was reading that on your website. Tell me about what took you to Fiji and what you did there.
A friend of mine has a house there, he lives there, and he's adopted 8 children, Fijian kids, whom I've had the pleasure of watching grow up, really. So we went to an island there called Rambi and brought wheelchairs and stuff that they needed. It was great.
You know, we keep hearing about that kind of thing now, like, you know, Oprah's doing the big give, that whole thing about people giving. How does that nurture the soul?
It's a fine line with service and charity because I took it to an extreme, as I often have done in the past, where I became a little compulsive about it, in that I felt like I should be serving and that I had all this affluence and abundance in my life, and that, you know, there was some guilt around not giving back if I wasn't. But over the last couple of years, I've realized that if I just let go and just trust in the generosity of spirit that runs through all of us, that I will give naturally and organically. I don't have to will myself into doing good because otherwise I'm dropping the ball and being a bad person or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it happens on its own.
It can also, I think, be in certain situations very emotionally draining when you're going to places where there is so much help needed. Did you ever feel deflated by it?
Yeah, it's when I have to start taking better care.
Yeah.
If I don't take care of me, I'm useless. Anybody else, anyway.
An artist's life is somewhat nomadic. I know you've been on the road with Matchbox 20. You're going to have the album, and then I gather you're doing a tour. How do you reconcile and I know you have, I think you have little doggies. How do you reconcile the life on the road? Because it must be hard. It must be hard to sometimes, you know, leave things behind for a period of time.
Yeah, I bring my community with me. I'm very community-minded, so...
Look for the Morissette caravan coming through the town near you.
Yeah, there's a lot of us, and as long as there's a lot of humor and good food and the Sopranos, we're good.
The Sopranos, yeah. I'm not sure how we're doing for time because does somebody want to give me a heads up how much time we have left? 8 minutes. I was hoping, because I tend to monopolize conversations, as you may tell, that I was hoping to get some audience questions because I know there's so many fans in the room. So do you mind if we go to a couple of people on the floor? Is there anybody who would like to ask Alanis a question? Or now you all get shy on me. Is there? Oh, yeah, we have one. Hi, what's your name? Your hand? Yep, you. She's got a microphone. There we go.
Thanks. Hi. My name's Liz. I'm just wondering what your whole take was on the whole Jagged Little Pill acoustic with the HMV versus Starbucks situation and how you felt about HMV and their backlash towards that.
I didn't really think about it. I love evolution, and I love trying new things, and I love disseminating music or art or anything in a non-monopolized way. And yet I also give credence to different pathways through which music has always been shared traditionally in a way that really works well too. So it was definitely not a malevolent slight on my part. It was my wanting to try something new. And the acoustic record itself lent itself to being very coffee house-esque. So I love the idea of it. It seemed really reverent for the 10-year anniversary.
It seems like it's the first time in a long time now, with the way that, you know, everything is changing in the music business, that artists have been forced to sort of look at the business side of things. And I know that you have been very vocal about a few aspects of that. How does that play? Because I know so many people who are musicians that can't even balance a bank account. So is there concern there? Like, I mean, are you worried about what's going to happen to a lot of, you know, you're sort of set, and I understand in a number of ways, but what about the up-and-comers?
Well, it's a challenge to use both sides of my brain, but I think there's something empowering about knowing one's own business. The more I know, the more I'm aware of what's happening, the more empowered I feel. So I would encourage the understanding of it. At the same time, it is torture for an artist, because I was just saying the other day how I really love to create art and to sing and move and dance and generate things from the ground up. And at the same time, I find myself being in this position of CEO or ruling a roost in some ways. And it's something that I've had to grow into by default versus choosing that actively. But it is more empowering for me to understand it versus putting my head in the sand.
Do we have another question in the house? This gentleman right here, I saw your hand go up. Wait a minute, we'll get you a microphone. There we go.
Yeah, Alanis, I spent 2 months in India last year with my son, and I found it very illuminating. And I was wondering, Alanis, how do you get Alanis Morissette out of your mind? Or can you do that, and how do you do that?
It's always out of my mind. I have to bring it back into my mind to show up and be here. My challenge is the reverse of what it might seem like for someone in the public eye. It's an irony that is not lost on me, that for someone who looks as though I'm so comfortable being in the public eye and loves being on stage, I actually hate attention.
This is killing her right
it
now.
is.
Yeah.
No, I've gone to therapy, so I have learned to. So your question was, how do I forget? For me, it's how do I remember? Because I've always had an identity crisis. So for me to actually remember who I am is something that I most easily do through writing. So in some ways, songwriting has helped me define who I am, even though defining who I am is funny, because I just think it's me defining my ego or my personality, which I don't believe is what I actually am. I believe that I'm the source, and I could go into it for many hours about just we're pieces of God walking around. So for me to define who I am as a personality or a name or a persona is interesting enough, but it's not my main goal.
Let's go to another question. I think we have a few more minutes. Hi. Yeah, we've got another. Maybe you can pass the microphone to her right there. Excellent. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Daryl. I was just wondering, I'm a songwriter, and I'm kind of curious about how your relationship with songwriting has changed or evolved since you began songwriting.
It's faster, and I trust it more. I no longer have any fear about writer's block, because I just feel like writer's block means that you should probably be eating a sandwich somewhere and not writing. So I think the process is perhaps same in terms of the length of time to write a song. It's usually about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But now I just trust it more, whereas in the middle 90s, like 95, whenever I'd write a song and it would quote-unquote come through me, I'd start crying and shaking and freaking out, and poor Glenn Ballard had to deal with all that. Whereas now I just trust it, and I go in at 1 p.m. and I leave at 4 p.m. and the song's finished, and I have more faith in the process, I guess.
It's actually been really nice chatting with you, but I'm getting the rap signal. She's got to perform in about an hour. And then you're on back out on the road with Matchbox 20 tomorrow night, is that right?
We fly to Seattle tonight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's an absolute pleasure speaking with you. All the best with flavors of your entanglement and detanglement, or whatever it may bring you. Congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award, and I have to say on behalf of the fans that we do not believe that a Lifetime Achievement Award will allow you to slow down. We won't tolerate that. So we wish you much more success and happy lifetimes of, so to speak, of achievement.
Thank you so much
for being
thank
here.
Thank you.
Hi, Alanis. When you write an album, what kind of release do you feel afterwards, and does it seem to be sort of therapy for you? Do you get to get more insight into some of your actions after you finish writing them?
Yes, songwriting helps me with gaining objectivity on what's happening in my life, to the point where sometimes I'll hear a song that I've written many years later, and it will clarify it even much longer after the fact. I know that every night before a record is released, I wake up with a start, and I'm completely freaked out at the thought of sharing what's going on with me publicly, and then I fall back asleep and all is well.
I remember when Jagged Little Pill was released, and for some reason, we could not find your first 2 albums in Canada. It was as if they were pulled from the shelves. Wow. No one mentioned them. I don't
A
know
lot
if
of other
they're-
people found them.
Yeah, I don't know if they're available. I had it on cassette, but I don't know if they're available now. I know you have a sense of humor about things, and not that it was bad, but I'm just saying, you know, back in that day.
I have
with
no
the,
shame,
with
is what
the
you're saying.
hair, with the hair, those hair days.
Yes.
How would
Thankfully, I
you-
wasn't alone in that hairstyle.
No, I was
Imagine I was.
exactly- I had
Everyone
it
else's
too.
hair was flat, and mine was huge.
Even Steve had it, I think. I'm just wondering how you would feel if those albums were re-released, because you know when you look at the Stones or other artists, their whole catalog is usually available.
With the internet, it is pretty available from what I understand, and most people I know who want a copy of it have one. But I don't really know what's happening with those records in terms of reissuing or re-releasing, so I have no shame about it. So,
Were they pulled back then?
is that even possible?
I don't know.
To pull a record?
Who would know such a thing?
I know nothing. I just work here.
Next question.
Speaking of those earlier albums, I mean, one of the things that you managed to do, which I found just really fascinating, is that you really reinvented yourself almost impossibly. I mean, you went from a very pop and very light-hearted sort of stance to a very, organic. Was it a very difficult transition, especially in terms of figuring out how you were going to fit in afterwards?
Well, I think it's, if I'm to stereotype and generalize, which I hate to do, but I'll do it. My Canadianness was very extreme to begin with. I had a little passive-aggressive thing going on, so it made sense to me that I would be repressing in some ways the more personal subject matters of songs as a 16-year-old. I don't think I was emotionally mature enough to back it up. I barely am now. So then when I went to Los Angeles, I remember thinking that I wanted to, knowing that I wanted to just write my personal experience. So it started off a little bit more fictitious. There were a couple songs in my teen years that I remember singing that resonated on a personal level, but I think the courage came when I turned around 18 years old, where it was enough of fictionalizing and it was time to be autobiographical, which was terrifying, but much better for me.
There's been these things popping up on the popular media channel YouTube, sort of offering a really close glimpse into sort of the private aspects of your own, I guess, things away from your music and on. And are you trying to sort of utilize this sort of form as a new way, that sort of transparent dangling carrot, the next phase, in your career? Because you do it so well, really. What is it all about, really?
Well, I've been doing it since as far back as I can remember, and now really all that's changed externally is that there's a forum for it. So I've just been pretty consistent in loving the thought of capturing on tape in a very humor-filled or non-precious way what's been going on. Our entire flight here, we landed at 5 a.m, was filmed and will show up somewhere. So nothing's changed in terms of how I've approached it, but thankfully, or not thankfully now, there's many more ways to share it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but okay.
Our next question is from Alan from CBC.
Hey, Alanis, congratulations. And hello from Ottawa. We CBC Radio, we just did this tribute concert in Ottawa where we got all these Ottawa musicians to be doing the songs of Alanis right from Fate Stay With Me. We got the...
I heard. I'm sorry I wasn't there. That just sounds...
It was incredible. They, but I was wondering, as we were having these jazz musicians, opera stars, pop singers, root singers, African guitarists, etc., reinterpreting the songs, the thing that kept coming up for everyone was just the different levels of meaning they could find the songwriting to be reinterpreted. And revisiting something that you wrote when you were 10 years old, they were able to find this beautiful song within that. You said earlier that you sometimes look back on music from the past and it gives new meaning to you. Could you expand on that a little bit? Could you give a few examples or one example of a song that has meant something different to you?
Yeah, there's a song on the
DVD called Feast on Scraps. I think there are 10 or 11 songs on there. I can't remember how many. One of the songs is called Sorry to Myself. And I remember having written it at the time. It was irrelevant for me at the time. And then 6 years later, I listened to it again, and it's incredibly relevant at different points much later on. So I often feel like they're prayers in some ways to myself. And I'm on tour right now, and I'm singing songs from the last however many years, 13 years, I guess, at this point. And there is not one lyric where I cringe. And that says a lot to me, because I could easily be having a cringe festival if I'm singing songs from 10 years ago. So
I'm really curious what your first initial thoughts and reaction were when you opened up your door and there was a boob cake from Fergie.
A bouquet from?
A boob cake.
A booty cake.
Yeah.
Lots of laughing. And I'd had a party that night, and I wanted to eat the butt, but everyone had put their hands on it as a joke and taken photos, so I couldn't eat it because there were fingerprints all over the cake. Sweet and adorable that she got that it was in the spirit of fun.
My name is Logic. I'm covering Canadian music on behalf of StoneFromAfrica.com, Stone from Africa TV. I really respect the humanitarian with you. There's a lot of, we really don't really see that in a lot of artists today. What I want to know is that how have you maintained that, throughout the years that you've been in the industry that's really so cutthroat and that's really designed to, I guess, even devalue a lot of artists. How do you maintain yourself through all that, all the trials and tribulations?
How to maintain the soul part, you mean, or the contribution part? I guess?
The contribution, the soul. I mean, just standing up for what you believe in, really, in an industry that's kind of somewhat of a dictatorship, really.
Right. I don't get out much, and I stay insulated in to whatever extent that I need to in order to stay somewhat sane. I also went through a period of time where I started compulsively contributing because I had a little bit of guilt about being in the public eye and having all this affluence, so I thought that I should contribute, and I did it almost compulsively for a while. And then I realized that if I just let go and just return to my natural state, that I would innately want to contribute, and I wouldn't have to force myself or do it compulsively. So it's a natural thing for me to want to contribute, and I often find myself going back typically to artist rights, women's issues, and environmental issues, but ultimately my main passion is about the human condition and healing the ruptures between myself and other, and myself in spirit or God, or all the splits that happen in humanity. I'm fascinated by it and fascinated about the healing process. So that's where I put most of my energy these days.
Our next question is from Larissa from City TV.
You're being inducted into the Music Hall of Fame. You're also being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award. At this stage in your career, for you to be honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, I mean, how do you look at that?
I think it's great. I feel grateful. It's a challenge for me to let myself be recognized for anything. So, great opportunity to stand there and take it, as my friends say. And I'm not precious about it either. I see it as an amazing encouragement to continue on my path.
But surely you have a longer way to go.
Sure. I really do think I'm going to live till I'm about 103 or so. So, there's a lot to go.
Hi again. One quick question and one proper question. I know you've been on an extensive tour. Is it just a coincidence that today is a day off, or that you made it here? Because I know you had a gig yesterday. I think you have a gig tomorrow.
I think it is a coincidence, even though I don't believe in those. But yes, I think it was just well-timed.
Okay. The other thing is, a few weeks ago, Neil Young, he was at, I think, the Berlin Film Festival, and he came out and said that he doesn't believe that music has the power to change the world anymore. And I know there were a number of artists I got emails from that were kind of alarmed, and I was kind of alarmed that when I read it too. How do you feel about that?
I think there's a beautiful humility to that comment. And I also think that not one single person can affect any huge change on the planet that's
going to change the consciousness level of an entire ecosystem. So I think it's the critical mass or the collective that can really affect huge change. So I think there's a humility in that comment that I really resonate with, that it can lean toward the sort of messianic complex if you think that you're this one creature that can change the planet.
I mean, I think he was saying that it once could, like perhaps in the 60s,
60s
but
and
now he
70s.
doesn't feel it can. Maybe the quality of music it's a statement on.
Maybe he doesn't like the music he's listening to right now. He can always go back and listen to the music in the 60s and 70s, so thank God for him.
Hi, I'm Melissa from Tunage Magazine. My question is, you've pretty much done a lot. You've done TV, you've done film, you've done music, and I think in most people's eyes you're seen first and foremost as a musical artist, a songwriter, a singer. Do you find it easier now to move into other forms of media when you want to, like doing a TV stint or a movie stint? Do you find the lines are a little more blurred and there's more flexibility than in the beginning, like when you first started out?
No. Schedules are schedules, so there are a lot of opportunities that I feel privileged to be offered that I have to say no to all the time because I'm on tour or vice versa. But I remember being 10 years old, I think, and the proverbial fork in the road presented itself at that time too, between continuing to be on this television show I was on or making music. And the great thing about music is that it requires me and perhaps another person or two, as opposed to 50 people and crazy budget and that kind of thing. So it's a little easier to write songs.
You have a new album out, or coming out very shortly. When you actually create albums, do you have to have a challenge for them, or what do they have to sort of qualify for you in order to really get into the mood for them?
Well, I'm never really in the mood to write. I hate writing. So I have to structure some sort of disciplined thing. So what I'll do is I'll realize it's time to write, because typically an album consists of 2 journals full. And before the writing of Flavors of Entanglement, I wrote, I think I filled about 7 journals. So I was teeming with sort of creative pregnancy, so to speak. And I just schedule time in a studio. And then I drag myself there. And then it happens.
Well, when is a song ready for you?
Usually 20 minutes after we start it. If a song writes itself, there's an effortlessness to it that I appreciate. And if a song is a belabored, arduous process, I stop it and I throw it out and I don't even finish it. So it's done when it writes itself. I just kind of show up.
A quick two-parter, Alanis, and I want to make this fast, but obviously this gentleman mentioned earlier on in your career, you started out as a real teen pop idol. Your dance career was doing really well here in Canada, and the Junos and all that, and that's how you really got your start. And every album of yours in succession has sort of been a little bit different from the next, and of course when you started your collaboration with Mr. Ballard, sort of started getting more rocky, obviously. But is there any point when you do future album releases you might make a more return to that electronic or dance-oriented sound? And the second question is there any truth to the rumor that they're going to have a You Can't Do That on Television reunion, and would you be a part of that?
I didn't know. I didn't hear about that, but sure. That'd be fun. So yeah, this record that I just finished, I worked with Guy Sigsworth on it, and he's worked with Imogen Heap and Bjork, and so he's more technologically inclined to begin with, sonically, and just as a human creature, he's techno man. So there's a nice fusion of my sensibility and his, which is part of why I wanted to work with him. But I never really think in terms of what I had done at 16 versus what I've been doing recently as being that different. It's just a continuum to me. I just sort of move around it.
Yeah.
Technology, organic sounds, wasn't writing as autobiographically, although, I could pull some lyrics out from the records that I wrote when I was a teenager, and I would say, yes, that was what was happening. So, I'll return. My sensibility is also to embrace the technology.
Right.
Very exciting. And the organic sound I'll always love. So.
Alan from CBC.
You mentioned, there I am. You mentioned hating the writing process from time to time.
It's the worst.
How do you get past that dislike of that part of the process and guide yourself towards the studio? I don't know whether the studio process is hated just as much as the getting the stuff on paper.
Well, I hate anything other than eating bonbons. So everything's sort of, at least for me, it's just showing up. Like if I can physically be in the room, then I can surrender and let the process move through. And it's such a lovely process. Whereas when I first started writing with Glenn Ballard, I would be so overwhelmed and I would be crying all the time when I was writing. And now when the process is happening, certainly there are tears and moments, but it's something I rely upon now. It's not, I used to believe in the concept of writer's block and those kinds of things. Whereas now I think that writer's block simply means that maybe you could be watching a movie instead. You know, it's not something I pressure myself with. But structure is mandatory for me. If I don't have some sort of discipline, it's not going to happen. So.
Okay. So do you have one more?
With the last 18 months seeing Radiohead giving, doing the pay what you can, and groups like the Charlatans who aren't massive, but they still were able to get 30,000 free downloads. With your success with the My Humps on YouTube, was there ever a time, not to knock what the record labels are doing, but did you ever stop to think, maybe I can just do this all myself and release what I want to release, get a song out there without having to go through the whole process of the scheduling and the promotion and everything like that?
I think there's pros and cons to every model. You know, there's pros and cons to, well, the pro to doing it on your own is that there's a certain sense of freedom, I guess. And I love hearing about the stories of some of my colleagues and peers who are striking out and doing it on their own. My eye really would be toward tweaking the model of record company contracts with artists, you know, making it more of a partnership. You know, the whole concept of getting married and then someone saying, you're going to marry me, but if you ever want to get divorced, you can't for 6 years. You know, it's like, well, I don't totally understand that. But I think if it's, let's get married and let's be partners and let's everybody win here and keep each other updated about what we can amend and evolve, I think it's great. So, but I also have benefited so greatly from having been, you know, semi-partners with different record companies throughout my lifetime. So lovely experiences there. And there's a lot of Warner Brothers people around the planet that I've really been supported by. So I think the model would be something I would shift.